Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green with Soul Pathology, and I am joined today with my dearest Chris Reber, consultant astrologer, where we are going to dive into the energies of August. And this will be our first half of August video. So, just a reminder, or if you're new to this, we are doing these videos in a part one and a part two because the energy usually shifts mid-month. And of course, it does astrologically, but numerologically, it does as well. And Chris and I can dive deep and we can go into all the things. Chris and I can talk about this stuff for 3 hours. So we're going to work to be efficient in our dialogue, but we want to make sure that we give you a great cosmic roadmap so you can navigate the energies, and when the energies are intense, that you're aware so you can learn from them, and when the energies are working in your favor and your good mojo, you can capitalize on them. So how have you been, Chris?
I've been good. Yeah. July is lots of twists and turns as expected, but things are good.
Good deal. Good deal. Okay. So, first and foremost, we'll start off with a little bit of numerology. In July, just to recap, we were in a 3 month in a 5 universal year, and the energy of the three and the energy of the five is heightened. It's unpredictable. It can be scattered. It is anything but consistent. And we have seen that. And the five creates dynamic shifts and changes. The three can be so out there and scattered. There have been lots of large scale events in the world that have been quite traumatic in other countries. I know Haiti and South Africa have really been under some very sad and disheartening pressure. And so that to me is a little bit of astrological reflection in terms of what is going on, and also in the numerology and the heightened energy of the three and the five, where things can get uh, disrupted, miscommunicated, and confused, and then blown out of proportion. So, what's challenging in that is finding the grounding, finding the truth, finding the voice, the reality, and being able to find the inner voice, the inner strength, the inner peace within, especially when there's external turmoil at heightened levels. And I know so many people have been experiencing that. Does that resonate with you, Chris?
Yeah. Well, and as you speak about that and the hardships and atrocities that are happening
Right.
globally, right? Not just here in the US. Um, in the backdrop of this entire year, we have the Saturn Uranus square.
Right.
And that is all about it creates instability with the structures that we have built so far in society and in our communities. But it's really about the breakdown of what isn't working so that we can build a better future. And so oftentimes we see the collapse and the fall of these empires and these structures, and it's an opportunity for us to reflect on, okay, how did we build it before, and why didn't it work, and why is it failing,
Right.
so that we can move forward.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty and the tragedy. This is one of those years where there is a massive juxtaposition between the light and the dark. And what creates illumination? The darkness. The light becomes brighter through the darkness. And when we are going through these dark nights of the soul, whether they're personal on a micro level or they're on the macrocosm, which they are one and the same, by the way, it's these opportunities for alchemy, to shift something of a low vibration into gold, into platinum, into something higher and more, illuminated. So we are in a consciousness revolution and evolution. And sometimes it feels like revolt and rebellion and animosity, and other times it's like enlightenment and mystical transcendent experiences. So we're both sending you, everyone, love. And whatever you've been going through, the highs and the lows, whatever you're experiencing, know that we're in the midst of deep shifts and changes on a human level, on the level of humanity, and also in our soul's evolution. We are in unprecedented times on this earth and on this planet. We incarnated into these bodies because we qualified. And so we came into masterclass. Like, this is straight up PhD. This is like double PhD kind of timelines. So if you feel like it is one thing after another, you're in it. You're in it. You're getting, I mean, you're getting like the highest of the highest PhD in human school and soul school right now. That's how it feels.
That's honestly a really great summation of
Totally.
what
Totally.
it feels like.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit of numerology. So we move from the 3 to the 4. You know, the numbers are sequential. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, communication, charisma, clarity, you know, attraction rather than promotion, blowing things out of proportion, socialization. The 4, if you draw a 4 on your piece of paper, it's extremely linear, it's angular, it looks like a grid. Everything about the 4 is building a solid foundation. Think about 2020. 2020 was a 4 universal year. 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0 equals 4. We had to reprioritize. Everything was reset through the pandemic, through politics, whether on the world stage, in the United States, in Canada, everywhere you look, things were reset on a global scale. And a lot of us on a personal level had to reset and reformulate our priorities, and whether it was impacting us physically through disease and through the disease of COVID, which is still impacting us, obviously, or through losing jobs, children at home, you know, parents working and having to teach their children at home, teachers, you know, working remotely with students. I mean, there was this reset, this reestablishment of reprioritizing, reformulating things. So August is a month where all of the chaos that may have been out of control and felt inconsistent and also illuminating, you know, and extroverted and connecting and exciting, we start to take all of that down a notch and really say what matters. What are my priorities this month and in the remainder of 2021? What's important to me? What do I feel that I can accomplish? What are my visions and my goals? What's realistic? What's practical? And also the energy of the 4 is it works well under restriction. So when it's got limited resources, it does great. People who have 4s in their numerology, they're list makers, they're box checkers. They love their school supplies. You know, like if they have all of their school supplies, their pens, their colored pens, and their post-it notes, and they have everything, they find stability. And so the energy of the 4 is about building foundations that are standing on solid ground. But in order to do that, you clean house. And cleaning house may literally be cleaning out the shoes you have not worn in the past couple of years, the messy drawer in the kitchen. So it may be literal, having a garage sale. It can be mental clutter, chatter, unnecessary chatter that's going on, living in the past, old storylines, or future tripping. So getting very clear in your thoughts, in your vision, in your planning, in the communication, the internal dialogue that's going on, the external dialogue. It can also be emotional clearing, decluttering emotionally, feeling resentiment. The word resentment literally means to refeel, to resentiment, to refeel. So it's a really good time. Actually, I think August is for forgiveness, recognizing what resentments you might be clinging on to in order to say, wait a minute, this resentment I keep refeeling, reliving, and it's limiting me from miracles, from the ability to receive, because the 4 is a doer. It's like Virgo. The 4, the 4 is let's get it done. Let's get it done practically, efficiently, effectively, and then let's move on to the next task. So really being able to create and prioritize what your goals and your visions are, to narrow those things down and to suit up, show up, and then be able to let go and to relinquish control. What can I control? What's within my control? My attitudes, my actions, and my behaviors. And last but not least, the 4 energy is a great month for health related things. So, and because the sun will be moving into Virgo in the second half of the month, really it's going to be a great time to reset your health and wellness routines. It's a good time to, you know, look at your diet, look at what you're eating or your exercise, or start a meditation or a yoga class. So it's a great time for routines starting a new routine, whatever that may look like for you. So building some sort of foundation that creates and supports your overall health and wellness. All of that being said, universally, we're still in this 5 energy. And the 5 and the 4 don't jive. Yet they can. They can if you know how to harness the energy. So the 5 is about dynamic shifts, changes, detours. The 5 is ultimately about freedom. So anything that creates this restricted, constricted energy in your life, if you can get very present, and the 4 is very present in its day-to-day task, what's on the agenda, what needs to get done. If you can find yourself getting things done, but feeling that there's a flow, then you're maximizing the dialogue between the 4 and the 5, because the 5 is ultimately about spaciousness and freedom, whereas the 4 likes to get down to business. So it's about suiting up and showing up, but actually finding greater spaciousness, freedom, ease, and being flexible. The 4 is sometimes highly inflexible because it can be a bit of a control freak. Whereas the 5 is like, I can't even be accountable. I can't handle this anymore. I have to quit this job. I just have to quit. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do life anymore. So there's going to be this interesting dialogue between the rebel rouser that just says, screw it, screw you guys, I'm going home. And then it's like, but I have to get this done. I have to get this done right now. So we may experience some conflicts. It's like the opposition in astrology through other people, through ourselves, our dialogues with ourselves and our higher selves, or our families, our friends. Is this resonating with you? I know you know the 5 energy well, but I know you understand the energy of the 4. I mean, what does this feel like to you as far as the numerology for August, Chris?
It feels like it's a month about getting really clear and focused on what it is that you are trying to call into your life for the next 6 months, but also for 2022. It feels like, we are laying foundations, but in order to lay foundations, you have to excavate, you have to clear, you have to get rid of the things that are not serving you and the things that you've accumulated over the course of this year, but also previous too. So there's, a couple of people or clients I've worked with recently where they're holding on so hard to these identities or these versions of themselves, and they want change. They want, new, they want something fresh and something dynamic and free, but they're still holding on to these old systems. And so
Right.
August is a month of getting really clear and really honest with yourself too. Like, get really honest with, okay, what am I holding on to, right? You talked about resentments. What am I holding on to with this person or this feeling about this person? And is it inhibiting me from moving forward into the direction that I want to go? And the astrology, it all supports that, right? We have a lot of Mercury stuff. So it's about communication and how we project onto others and how others are perceiving us. And so it seems like the month is going to be, it's just a time to pull up your bootstraps and get to work.
Right. And also, because the 5 energy in numerology really is about dynamic shifts and changes, radically moving towards a new future, freedom. There's a sense of joy too that comes with the 5, because when you feel free, whatever that looks like for you, there's spaciousness and there can be fear around that. And the 4, because it's so constricting, really can bring up old fears. So the resentments. So when the old fears come up, recognize, wait a minute, this is not serving me. This is limiting me from my brilliance, my intelligence, and any relationships or experiences that feel limiting or constricting. Stepping back and getting curious. I want to go to something astrological that I think is important to note that will come up in our dialogue today. But the north node of the moon is in Gemini. And Gemini is, the investigative journalist. It's ruled by Mercury. So it's all about the day to day. Mercury is close in, one of the inner planets. It's about thinking, information gathering and sharing, socialization, connecting. But what I love about about Gemini energy, it's about curiosity. So it's about shifting your perspective. And so when something hard comes at me, and this comes back to that PhD or master class that we were talking about, when something feels confronting or disparaging or discouraging, or I'm, you know, analysis paralysis around something or someone, or in a resentment, it feels tough. And so I will always say to myself, I've been practicing this consciously this year. Wait a minute. Can you step back? Let's get curious about this, because curiosity is childlike. It's about seeing things through a new lens and a different perspective. And curiosity to me feels more lighthearted. It's the other side of the brain. You know, it's reformulating neural networks in the brain to reformulate connections. So curiosity is about, what is this teaching me, and how can I maybe see things from a different perspective? Yeah.
Yeah. And Gemini, I mean, it's mutable air, and mutable
Yeah.
energy is about being flexible and malleable. And
The
Gemini
fire.
is really good about seeing both sides of a situation and not placing too harsh judgment, because
Hmm.
it can adapt and understand where both people sides are coming from. And that's how it understands, that's how it is able to process and understand on a deeper level, because it's not coming from a place of judgment, and it is staying in that place of curiosity.
For sure. So as we kick off the month astrologically, Chris and I were both talking about, however, whatever the first whatever the first of the month breeds, whatever transit or ingression happens and kicks off the month, we always feel like that basically sets the stage for the month. So on the first, the sun in Leo conjuncts Mercury in Leo.
Mhm.
Tell us about that. And
So
conjunctions are when two planets are together, it's like they're holding hands, they're on top of each other, so their energy is fused together.
yeah, and the conjunction energy, they're in the same position. So it's like they're looking out and the planets understand each other, because they're coming from the same place. But so Mercury, like you mentioned before, it's about the day to day. It is, Mercury rules our friendships, it rules our community, but it's really about communication. And so when the sun conjuncts Mercury, this is when we get the answers that we've been seeking. This is when
Yeah,
we
love
have
that.
the ideas, we have the insights, they come to us. And this is probably things that we've been sitting on for a long time. And we're like, okay, you've been asking for a sign, you've been asking your guides, you've been looking for something in the outer world to reflect back at like what you've been feeling. And this is the time for it. Because Mercury is the messenger, it brings a message. It's also on a personal level, it's a really good time for socializing. You might just feel more open and more extroverted during this time. Like you want to just, you'll go out and go to dinner with friends or invite people over and have those quality moments together. However, that is in isolation, right? Mercury conjunct the sun in isolation. But because we kick off the month with this conjunction, it leads us into the second and the third, where both the sun and Mercury will be opposed to Saturn.
Yes.
And so Saturn being the planet of delayed gratification, of restraint, right? There's that four energy of constriction and
Hmm.
restraint. Mercury opposite the Saturn it's like delayed cognition. So you get the answer, but you can't act on anything. It's
Okay, I love this, because so when you could see me, I was like taking notes here on my own, because I love that you said we get the answers we've been seeking. So I
Mhm.
want to highlight this for everyone, because this is how I personally will use this energy. In the last couple of days of the month of July, I will say, higher self, higher power, show me, reveal to me, maybe in these two areas. And it's not, the four energy is about getting clear on things. So don't overdo it. You don't need 25 answers, maybe one or two things. Higher self, higher power, reveal to me with clarity through signs, synchronicities, dialogues, conversations, Mercury, through other people. reveal to me what I've been seeking. Show me with clarity, give me the validation and the encouragement. And then there you bring in what happens on the second. It's not about jumping in and taking action, which is what so many of us want to do. And the 5 energy, it's Chris is my little 5 over there, and he knows it. So like Chris is a 5 like that. And so Chris knows this 5 energy, and he knows the 5 is like dynamic. So it's like, I'm going to quit this job. I'm doing it now. I'm moving. I mean, he moved in a darn pandemic from Washington, D.C. to LA last year, but he planned that. He knows how to practice hesitation. So what he is sharing here is also beautiful dialogue between the 4 and the numerology and the 5 of listen for those answers, see how they come, get the validation. And then you say, hey, Saturn says, pull back the reins, because if you think through this, more will be revealed about your most organic path forward versus being in self-will. I've got to get this done. I've got to get it done today. I've got to address it right now. And usually when I'm in self-will, I'm not in conscious contact with my higher self and my higher power. So the first and the second are, so I would say the last couple of days of July, the first and the second, are very pivotal days for revelations.
Yeah.
Yet pontificating on those and saying, show me how to move forward in this in the highest, most effective evolutionary way. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. And also look for where Leo is in your chart, because that's going to give you more context of what area of life this is going to bring up for you, right? So for instance, like Leo is in my 9th house of like higher wisdom and education and travel. So it's like, okay, there may be an insight of like the direction, or if you're moving, or if you're going someplace, or if you're going to start studying, but it's not the time to enroll in the course. It's not the time to book the plane ticket. It's a time for acknowledging, okay, this is the message, but I have to wait, because Saturn's presence here is asking for patience and for restraint. Now,
and I'm thinking of this too, because Leo is in both my 2nd and my 3rd house. And so, and also my North Node when I was born is in Leo. So whenever the sun is in Leo for me, it's always getting out of my South Node Aquarian comfort zone and using those lessons, but really tapping into Leo and where things beautifully come together for me is I'm in Austin right now with my family, and my mother's birthday is the 29th of July. And she is a Leo like there's no Leo I know. Her sun is in Leo. Her moon is in Leo. Her Mercury's in Leo. Her rising is, she has more Leo than you can imagine. So being able to really see the Leo energy and to fuse that and know where it falls in your chart. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you've never had a natal chart reading, of course you can go online and, put in your birth data and get a chart, but having a reading, Chris does readings, and, his information will be below and you can reach out to him. But it's helpful to understand when we have these transits where they actually fall for us personally within our astrological chart. So we know how to harness the energy, and whether it's the low vibes or the high vibes, so we can navigate it with greater grace and confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the other thing too is that these transits, just because the day passes, it's like you have about 3 days afterwards or so, everything is working in tandem with each other. They're not in isolation. So you also have to take in context of, okay, so we have some Saturn energy, we've got some Mercury energy. Is it a square? Is it an opposition? Right? It's complex. It's just like the frickin' weather forecast, So
yeah,
just take it together and use it in the backdrop of whatever is going on in your life. But also try not to think too much about it too.
Yeah, because between Saturn and Mercury, and also with all of the passionate Leo energy that is so fiery and personal, there we remember how I always say when we transition numerologically, we've still got that 3 energy that's attempting to move into the grounding of the 4, which the 4 is very Saturnian. The 4 is Saturn energy. So really, as best you can, pause when agitated, hesitate, practice restraint of pen, tongue, text. Picking up the phone and addressing something immediately. And so this is the best time in my mind, these first 2 or 3 days of the month, to really say, eureka, okay, higher self, please reveal more. Show me the clearest way forward, and practice a little bit of reservation and hesitation. So it's a good time for some meditation, some slowing down, or getting out in nature, getting outside, getting out in nature. Okay, so on the 3rd, we have a beautiful aspect, and I am so excited to hear your take on this. Venus in Virgo is going to trine Uranus in Taurus.
Well, alone, the transit is lovely, because Venus is our values and our personal relationships. If you're coupled, it's usually going to have an effect on that relationship. But again, if you're single, this is a really great time for dating and stepping outside of your comfort zone, because Uranus is involved here. This is also a good time for changing up your look, for changing your hair, maybe wearing a different kind of eyeshadow or makeup. It's really about just innovating the ways that you present, but also innovating your relationship to vanity, your relationship to beauty, and self-care, because all the Venusian themes of how we take care of our bodies, Venus, it governs our complexion and our skin. So this is usually a good time where you're just kind of like feeling yourself, you feel really good in your body. Your self-esteem is at a heightened space. Whereas I know in July, we did have a hard aspects to Venus. So, your self-esteem may have taken a little bit of a hit, but it's all good, because now we have Uranus here kind of supporting and boosting us. But again, with Uranus being in Taurus and Venus being in Virgo, it's a really good time to committing yourself to the routines and your health, right? You mentioned health earlier, and this is another way where you could implement this into your life, because Venus in Virgo is about service. It's about like your service to other people, but this is a way you could turn it on yourself. Like, how am I being of service to myself? How am I taking care of myself? And Taurus energy is very grounded and nourishing, and it's about taking care of, whether that's a garden or that's like, your family or your finances. But there's a lot of potential for establishing new routines, new relationships, or new relationships with yourself too.
Yes. And I think what you brought up too, apart from the health and wellness, the financial planning, because the energy of the 4 is really good for budgeting and financial planning. So with Venus, which oversees, money because of Taurus, it is really, it's overseeing that. And then we have the energy with the Virgo and Taurus. There's all this dialogue around value and worth and reprioritizing your prosperity. So whether prosperity is, cash in hand, or the allocation of your resources and how you're spending them, or your internal resources, thinking about it from the esoteric sense. And for me, when I know I feel beautiful on the inside, or I feel healthy internally, it always translates externally. And then when I feel down and low and downtrodden, which is human, it's part of the human condition. When I feel devalued or in a lack consciousness, a lack mindset, less than, unworthy, not enough, then that translates externally, and next thing you know, it's like a domino effect. So yeah.
And on a personal level too, because I work with a lot of people who are single and they're looking to date. This is a beautiful transit for an unexpected date, just like coming out of the blue. Like you get a text, or you meet somebody, at the gym or at the grocery store, and they hit on you, and and then you like have this connection, because Uranus is unexpected. And even in a trine formation, the only thing you can expect with Uranus energy is unexpected events.
So this is a really good day, by the way, to get up and say, today it is my intention that everything unfolds more extraordinarily than I can humanly fathom.
Mm-hmm.
Best to start the day that way. Okay, so on the 4th, we crunch down a little bit because Mercury in Leo will square Uranus in Taurus. So here we have Uranus again in Taurus, and we've got Mercury popping back up, and we've got a square. So Mercury square Uranus.
This is challenging our attitudes and our beliefs, because Mercury is a lot about how we communicate, but it's also our attitudes and what we believe on a personal level. But it's a lot about what we've inherited too from our family. And Uranus in the challenge or the square formation, it's, you may say things. This is where you get into interactions with people where you say things that you don't mean, and you're like, oh, where did that come from? Or like, why did I say it? Or why did I approach it this way? Because there's something in the ways that you communicate that needs to be worked out. And on a personal level, this is very nervy energy, because Uranus governs the nervous system and Mercury is the mind. So these are days where you're likely to feel very restless or just irritable, and you might find yourself lashing out at people, or people may be lashing out at you. And it's not a time of responding to those circumstances. It's a time of getting curious, right? Use that Gemini energy. Get curious of, okay, how am I showing up in this interaction? Or what am I consenting to in this dynamic that elicited this response from this person, right? Like it's not a time of getting defensive and lashing out, because that's the tendency here is like, you're going to be activated. You're going to be unrested or just unwell, in a sense where you're just like, I need to fight, I need to stand my ground. But it's not about that.
And I think you said, you brought up something very profound in terms of inheritance, because on an ancestral level, on a DNA and a genetic level, we are ancient beings, and muscles carry memory. So whether it doesn't matter what you believe in terms of lifetimes or reincarnation, or you just look at things psychologically or actually physiologically and biologically, we have muscle memory. So what have I inherited in this lifetime or in my karma and in other lifetimes that I am not contractually in agreement with or in alignment with, because I am evolving? And that's evolution. Adaptation is an overarching theme of what is happening in 2021. It's the evolution of consciousness. Time is bending, shifting, and changing. So I think what you said was extremely profound, and something that I'm going to pontificate as I move into the month of what inheritances, whether they be literal or they be ancestral, or the dynamics within my family of origin, or in my karma, what have I inherited that I'm actually feeling that the contract is no longer valid? It is null and void, yet my behaviors, attitudes, and actions are still living in an outdated contract that is no longer legal or binding for me. So that's so to take that from day to day to the bigger picture, and especially between the dialogue of the 4 and the 5, I think you hit on something profound. So inheritance, and also what inheritances am I changing? And I know that, and I know this from clients, I know it from the work that I do neurologically in the scientific and the academic community, that we are mutating, we are shifting, we are, building new, we are reaccessing and accessing parts of our brain cognition that we have not as a human species and race been able to utilize yet. Or maybe we did in the times of Atlantis. That's a whole nother story. The human race has been evolved on this planet before, and in my beliefs and my understanding, and in work with past life and future life work. But anyway, that being said, I think that's a very profound distinction to make. So bring it into the day-to-day, and whatever those day-to-day triggers are, they actually may bring some awareness for you around something that's going on a karmic or on a deeply unconscious, psychological, subconscious level. So, okay, so the 6th, we got another square.
Yeah.
And Uranus and Saturn appear again.
Well, and if you notice, for those that are studying astrology, if you notice, like, okay, when the sun and Mercury are conjunct, they're going to follow similar transits because of their positioning, right? So we had, the oppositions from Saturn, and then Mercury went through a square for Uranus, and now the sun is also going through a square for Uranus.
Yeah.
It's expected, but it's a little different than the Mercury square, where since the sun is your physical position and your sense of self and your identity, this is challenging your identities. And I think we mentioned earlier about, like, people wanting to move forward, but they're holding on to these identities of these old versions of themselves, and it's preventing them from moving forward. Around this date, this is probably going to be a good time for you to clock into, what am I holding on to? What sense of self and identities am I really attached to that are preventing my growth and my evolution? On a personal level, sun square to Uranus, unexpected events, okay? Good or bad. This could be accidents, or this could be promotions, right? It's really up for anything when Uranus is involved. So again, the only thing you can expect is the unexpected. I would advise people not to put themselves in positions where, like, there is going to be conflict, or you are going to be fighting with people, because we have Leo energy and Taurus energy, and they're both very fixed, and you're not likely to find compromise during this time because of the fixed energy, right? Like, Taurus is very stubborn, but Leo is also very stubborn in its own right.
Yep.
And Leo,
with all that pride. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so much pride.
They have a pride. Yeah, and they're like, once you burn that bridge, you're out. I mean, like, Leos can be unforgiving because they're extremely nostalgic. So they don't forget. They're like elephants. I know they're the lion, but they're like elephants. They don't forget, and I know this because I love this about my mom, which I know many of you can relate to, and family members are really dear friends. When it's like you have that person in 3rd grade, that steals your pencils, and then you get in trouble and you have to go to the principal and you get blamed. And so, 30 years later, mom's like, oh, so and so, you wrote that, you had to go to the principal, you did, and it's like, that's like, the person has grown and changed, but my mom still remembers, I had to go to the principal because this person did this to me, so it is, I think the way of looking at it is knowing that yes, you show up for life, you show up for what's on your schedule, but it's not a good time to interact with maybe people who do create a little friction. So it's not the best time to pick up the phone and address something or have a dialogue with someone who usually there is more conflict or tension. So laying low a little bit, and also not being tough on yourself, because for me, oftentimes, even if I am backed off, I'm the internal dialogue with I'm my own worst critic. Most of us are. I'm the hardest on myself. And so being mindful of where you're actually overwhelming yourself with old, outdated, or harsh beliefs, or anything that creates a sense of devaluation of your abilities, whether they be mental, physical, any kind of limitations. Just be mindful of the self-talk.
Yes. Well, and the Uranus energy, this is also where the detours come in, the energy of the 5. Yeah. So you may find yourself in a position that you weren't expecting, and you're just going to have to go with it. You're just going to have to pivot and be flexible and be curious, because this wasn't the plan. But Uranus transits, the beautiful thing about Uranus is what it teaches us is non-attachment to outcomes, because for whatever visions we hold and carry and that we have our sights set on, Uranus comes in and destabilizes and disrupts, because it wants us to look, or it wants us to learn how to hold the vision without being attached to it.
Yes.
And, you know, because in yoga, a lot of attachment causes suffering, right? And
Yeah.
so the less attachment we have to people, places, and things, the less suffering we bring into our lives. And this energy or this transit, it's a really good lesson in, okay, how am I too attached to this thing, this person, and where do I need to have a little more flexibility in my life?
Beautiful. And also, I mean, I think I love how you brought in the Uranus, not being so much attached to the outcomes. And because the 4 is very goal oriented, it's put the goal out there, but know that the goal and the vision and the end result may change. It really is about the journey. And so I always, the way that I think of it, especially because I know for me, in my journey of recovery, expectations, set me up for resentments, for disappointment, or whatever that may be. So being in a state of expectancy versus expectation. Yeah. But guess what this leads into the next day? The Leo new moon, which is, all the fiery new moons, especially Leo and Sag, I mean, sometimes to me, it's like overindulgence.
Yeah.
So we've got a new moon in Leo on the 8th and 16 degrees of Leo. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, new moons to me, they're such a tranquil time. They never feel as intense as full moons.
As full moons, right.
And so I always say new moons are never times, even though it's a beginning, it's an opening or a portal, it's not the time to take action. It's really a time of introspection and of deep rest. Because the lumosity of the moon, it's the dark of the moon. So your energy is likely to be a little lower during this time, even though it's in Leo. But
that's what I'm saying, because my Leos, they're wanting to be out and here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes those Leos, I love them because they love memory. They love connection. They love reminiscing and nostalgia. I mean, that is one of the most beautiful qualities of Leo. But then they're also the best future trippers I know. They worry and they think about the future. And so they're anywhere but the present. And new moons are very much about internal presence. And so Leo has this big fire energy that wants to get out and play and party it up. But yet it's about building this, stoking the internal flame to me, yet not taking action. So yeah. And I
Leo,
love that.
A Leo new moon, I would say, is best about where are you in your life trying to call in more courage? Because Leo energy comes from the heart, and it's really centered around embracing our courage and having confidence to move forward with our goals and our dreams. And again, it's a new moon, so it's not a time to enact with that courage, but it's a time to reflect and be like, okay, I really want to do this thing, but I'm scared, right? This is where like your fear is going to get in the way. So investigate the fear and call in courage. Like literally say, higher self, please grant me the courage to overcome this obstacle or overcome this fear, right? Like this is the time of setting those seeds, setting those intentions of whatever it is so that you can move forward. New moons, it's just not good to like go crazy. I mean, this past new moon, I was going crazy and it was like a little too much. My energy was all over the place. Full moons, you can do that, but new moons, stay back, take a bath, do some self-care.
For sure. And it's funny because I have a piece of pyrite right here. And pyrite is a great Leo stone, by the way. And because, Leo is ruled by the sun. And so this is about stoking the inner fire, but stoking the light within. So it's a real solar plexus time. You're, connecting with your mighty I am presence. So getting into I am versus, figuring out what you're afraid of and what the fears are and summoning the courage from a place of the heart. So interconnecting the solar plexus, the mighty I am presence, your grounded human intuition with heart-centered generous action. And when we're in our heart and we're summoning courage through the heart, so bringing the solar plexus up into the heart, that's when we illuminate ourselves and we can be seen. And Leo loves to be seen, but it loves to be seen through its heart. And yet it can be, egocentric because hello, we're human. And the sun thinks everything revolves around it because actually all the planets in our solar system do revolve around the sun. So
Yeah.
checking yourself in terms of your selfishness and self-centeredness and being able to move into a space of unselfish love, heart-centered action, and illuminating the self from the inside out. And when we move from the heart, our lights shine not only for the people that we love, the people around us, it ripples out into the cosmos. And that's what changes the frequency of the world and is helping us to shift into higher vibrations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also, one more thing I want to throw in on this Leo new moon is, because it resonates with the five, is childlike wonderment and spontaneity, because Leo is about creativity and fun and joy and and children, and so really getting curious, back to that Gemini North Node, curiosity, spontaneity, doing something even though it is a time, new moons are more introspective. Where do you feel spontaneous? Where do you feel that your creativity comes out? Oftentimes, on purpose, I will ask clients where I know that they're very binary.
Mm.
When do you feel creative? And they hesitate, and it takes them a long time to figure out where they feel creative. And creativity doesn't mean being Picasso or Lady Gaga, or an entertainer. Creativity can be through the mind. Creativity can be in interacting with people and creating solutions for people. So really figuring out where your creative light shines, when you feel that you are in your creative element and not afraid of being seen in that creative element. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 10th, we've got Venus opposing Neptune and Mars squaring the North Node. Okay, so Venus is in Virgo, Neptune is in Pisces. Let's talk about that. Venus opposing, so oppositions, Venus opposing
Yeah.
Neptune. Start there.
So I remember this very vividly because last year this transit was quite a doozy. And this, what happens oppositionally, this is through your personal relationship. So we have a tendency during this time to be really idealistic with the ways that we look at people or situations or things, because Neptune is involved and it's obscuring our vision. It's creating a sense of fantasy, but that's not the reality. So, this is a tendency where you have a crush on somebody and it goes way out of proportion and you created this whole scenario in your head about this like fake boyfriend or girlfriend, or if you're partnered, this is where you're not seeing each other clearly. Like, let's say, you have something that you want to bring up to your partner and you're assessing the situation one way, they're completely on another end of the spectrum, and you're having trouble meeting in the middle because of Neptune's involvement. It creates a fog, a haziness over the ways that you are relating to people. On a very deep personal level, complexion issues, because Venus represents the skin and our vanity.
Mm-hmm.
Neptune is projection and mirrors, but we feel during this time like we just may not feel the best about ourselves during this time. This is where we look in the mirror and it's complete body dysmorphia, or it's complete like distortion. And no matter how many times somebody tells you a thing about how wonderful your hair is or how beautiful or whatever, you're going to have trouble believing it. So this is a really great time for assessing your own personal relationship to vanity. How highly do you value outer beauty versus inner beauty? and being very intentional with the ways that you show up in your relationships, right? Because oftentimes with this opposition, one person is in la la dreamland, they're acting like Neptune, and then the other person is a little more grounded, but there's still a disconnect between the two. So yeah, I mean, I witnessed a lot of craziness the last time this transit happened last year, and there can be good that comes from it, but you have to be very intentional with the ways that you show up.
And what it also brought to mind is too, because of the vanity aspect, the impulse purchases, you know, because this could be a time where you think, oh, I should spend this money on this. And so to me, it's a time of no, maybe, you know, I'm like thinking like, you know, like Botox and plastic surgery, or I need this flashy new car, you know, like Neptune's, like I need this Porsche, you know, and it is totally out of my means, but I'm going to look sexy driving it. And I don't care that I can't have Starbucks. And listen, I live in Belize, so I have simplified my life, and those things I live within my means today. I really work very diligently for my insides to match my outsides. I'm human. I mess up, but this is when it's like the mind is like, I need a Porsche. You know, I can only afford a Toyota Corolla, but a Porsche will do. Well, a Porsche will fix everything. Even though I will have to eat ramen, a Porsche will fix it. So yes, I am talking about abundance issues and privilege issues, but I'm just giving that analogy of spending beyond your means. And so really a little grounding and practicality, tap into that 4, not that 5 impulse, and really just hold back, but also ask what's behind it that you're seeking. You know, what are you seeking to fulfill through that red shiny Porsche? Is it that I look good, I look sexy, I look like I make a lot of money in my reputation? And so being able to say, wait a minute, I'm not feeling confident in what, you know, my inner reputation. And so that's where the work is. It's the internal work. So the delusions and illusions can help bring, you know, kind of some internal mirroring into light, and we'll still be in that new moon energy. So it's a good time for that inner reflection of the solar plexus, the inner sun, coming into the heart-centered action versus it being external, superficial.
The Botox, that's a really good indicator or a significator for Neptune and Venus, because Neptune is concerned with image. You know, Hollywood is governed by Neptune. It's about projection and laying an image over how you want people to perceive you. So those kinds of issues are going to surface on a very superficial level of like, okay, maybe I should get Botox, but also like, how are you coming across to other people? And you may come to find out that other people are perceiving you differently than how you think you are.
Yes. And that's important to notice too. So now on the same day, we have Mars, which we haven't had any Mars stuff going on so far this month. Mars squares the North Node. So the North Node is in Gemini, and remind me where Mars is in August.
Let's see. Mars is it's going to be in Virgo. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So Mars square the North Node in Gemini.
Yeah. So this, I think, collectively, this is where we're probably going to see something more in our news feed of like Martian qualities. So like war and conflict and aggression and patriarchy and maleness really rearing its head in the news feed, in politics, because the North Node, it represents for all of us the direction that we're moving. And while the North Node has been in Gemini, this is really about the exchange of information. And you know, a lot of people, if you've been paying attention, journalism is under attack. The propaganda is a really big issue that we've been dealing with since the North Node has been in Gemini and South Node in Sagittarius. So
propaganda and then censorship, the two, you know, propaganda, censorship, straight up.
So whenever the North Node is being conflicted, these are moments in history where we see really big issues or moments in time of, you know, a politician speaking out against something, or you know, this is very much like back when Trump was our president, of him saying like fake news, like
And
these
he's
are
a Gemini, just to
and
remind
he's,
everyone. He's got, and if I'm not mistaken, his Gemini might be in his 12th house. I don't remember, but he is a Gemini of all proportions.
yes, he's
Yeah,
a Gemini, and his Mars is on his ascendant, so he's very
correct.
aggressive and very
Yeah,
inflammatory. But besides all that,
yeah.
this is we're probably going to see something in our news about, I mean, it could be about the pandemic, it could be about the vaccines, it really could be about any kind of information that we think we have an idea about, but we're being led astray. We're being led falsehoods. And again,
So
we have,
again, this correlates with what's going on with Venus opposing
yeah.
Neptune. It's smoke and mirrors. What you see
Mhm.
isn't always what you get. It's really not a time to jump on anyone's case or jump on a bandwagon. It's more
Yeah.
like, let me gather the facts and see what in my gut says, what in my gut feels true. What is my truth? That's back to the Sagittarius South Node, is this philosophical question of internal truth. And it's take what you want and leave the rest, but it's
Mhm.
not necessarily a time of action or fighting and aggression, although we may see it more on a world stage. And
Mhm.
so our opportunity is how we respond personally, and hopefully not taking that out on our personal interactions, whether they be professional or familial, intimate relationships, friendships, and
Yeah.
that we don't reflect the external illusions and delusions into our microcosm, our day to day. Yeah.
Yeah. And with Mars being in Virgo, again, that piece of like, I really have a feeling it's going to be about the vaccine, because
Right.
Virgo energy is medicinal, it's wellness, it's our health. And so there's going to be something about either peaks of the new variant. I mean, I know out here in California, the Delta variant is running rampant. We already have masks. We have to wear masks again. Like, you know, and Jupiter is retrograding back into Aquarius. So we spoke about this last time about how
Yeah.
there's going to be more restrictions. We're going to go back into similar kind of lockdown measures. There is going to be a regression as far as the direction of our freedom, right? Because
Right.
we experienced a brief period of freedom, but now we're going back. So this date, there's going to be some information about the vaccines or about the COVID, about the pandemic, and it's going to be eruptive. It's going to like be confronting in some way, shape, or form.
So and yeah, and I would say too, in this time frame, and we're going to talk about what's going on the 11th, and that's where we're going to close this first half of the month. But all that being said, it's a really good time to reassess your personal freedom versus living a life of quarantine. So really taking the pandemic out of the storyline, or the vaccines, or the efficacy, or politics, and whatever's going on in the world stage, and really looking at how we quarantine ourselves, whether that's mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and working to unquarantine ourselves to create freedom in our day-to-day life. What do we have control over, in our thoughts, in our actions, in our intentions, our belief systems? So unquarantining the self is really, to me, where we're going in the second half, where we can go, where we have control, so to speak, where we have empowerment in the second half of August, which you and I will get into in the next video. So on the 11th, we've got Mercury opposite Jupiter, and Mercury moves into Virgo. Yes?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So my
Yeah.
natal Mercury is in Scorpio, but my husband's is in Virgo, and he's a Libra, and he may as well be a darn Virgo. I feel like all my Mercury and Virgo people are just Virgos because they think that
Mhm.
way. And Mercury rules Virgo. So let's talk about Mercury in Virgo first. Let's just talk about that energy and what we can expect as Mercury moves into to Virgo.
Well, Mercury in Virgo is the four energy at its peak. Because
100% list
Mercury is
organization, all the things.
Mercury is happy, it's home in Virgo. It operates just very well there. So, you know, this is a time where we're likely to just, we're thinking more clearly. We have a better idea of the tasks at hand and how to complete them, you know, organizing the closet, or, you know, clearing up the clutter, both in your external environment and your internal environment. Again, we mentioned, you know, taking on a new health regimen or different routines. This is going to be a good time for that, because again, Virgo is, it's about being of service, but you can't be of service if you're not taking care of yourself.
Service to yourself. Right.
Yeah.
Oxygen mask on you first, and then you get to be of support and service without feeling overwhelmed or bogged down in responsibility, which is the energy of the four, feeling overtly responsible. And then your greatest asset, which is service, becomes something that you become resentful of because you haven't been able to take care of this human first in order to be wholeheartedly of service. One of the things I love about my husband with his Mercury and Virgo, he is dedicated to health and wellness routines. And you know this about him. He's like Benjamin Button. He just is anti-aging. You know, we have an age difference, although, you know, I mean, sometimes he acts like a 16-year-old in his, you know, his naughtiness and his mind, which is what I love because he's totally inappropriate. But at the same time, if I give him a grocery list and I'm like, you know, see whatever fruit and produce looks good, he needs me to say, see if they have grapes, rather than him looking and saying, well, those grapes look delicious. If the grapes aren't on the list, he's like, he doesn't see beyond that. So in this time, remembering, you know, yes, make your list, but also be a little spontaneous, be present, look for the beauty, you know, because Virgo is about beauty. It's about virtue and purity. So yes, having your list and your infrastructure and cleaning house and organizing and getting down to business, but having fun, changing the routines up a little bit. And that's one thing that we do well, because I'm always saying, okay, like, do I have to tell you on Saturday at 2:00 we're doing this? Or can we get up Saturday morning, I work, and then we decide if we want to do this? That's the way that energy works. And he's like, okay, I don't have to know. Like, we'll decide when you get up on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. So Mercury opposite Jupiter, Mercury opposite Jupiter. And tell me this, and I don't know if you know it off your top of your head, but when Mercury opposes Jupiter, it actually, never mind, it is in Virgo, because Jupiter is in Pisces. So
It's at
yeah,
like 0 degrees of Pisces,
right.
Jupiter. And then
Okay,
the ingression, it's like it hits it right as it
right
ingresses
at it.
Virgo.
Okay,
So this is jumping to conclusions, because Jupiter is expansion. It expands whatever it touches. But
right.
again, communication. We have the two planets of communication, which it mirrors the North and the South node,
Yeah,
because Gemini and then Sagittarius. So again, this is like a reiteration of kind of like the day before when Mars squares the North
yeah,
node. There's a jumping to conclusions, either personally or in
yes.
the world at large. This is it. I will say this is a good time for cross-checking the facts and having those conversations with people in your vicinity, within your locality, connecting to your neighbors, connecting to your brothers, your siblings, your friends. This is a chatty time that you're going to want to be in the know, but understand where your information is coming from, because again, we had all that Neptune stuff and then the square to the North node. So this is a time where you're likely to, or feel compelled to, make decisions or say things you don't know all the facts about, and you don't really know. Again, take the lessons of the Saturn energy in the beginning of the month of having restraint, having a little bit more poise and grace and tact with the ways that you are showing up and approaching life at this point, because it seems like there's going to be some unexpected twists and turns, whether that is in your job or your love life, or just what we experience as a collective, you know, consciousness, a collective human race. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting.
I think, and I actually think that there may be some financial turmoil on the world stage on the stock market and things like that
Well,
in
Uranus
August.
and Taurus, this whole transit of
So,
Uranus and Taurus is about
yeah,
it's shaking up our
right,
relationship to our resources. And that
right.
means money and the stock market, but also how we grow our food and
Yes,
where everything is coming from. Where are we resourcing our sense of security from?
absolutely. So just remember to recap the first half of August is there are going to be some shifts and turns and plot twist, yet we may feel very compelled to jump in, to get things done, to jump to conclusions, to react, to address things immediately. And so it's very imperative to really research the facts, do a lot of internal contemplation to find your truth, and also ask for assistance from your higher self. Pull out your oracle cards, or if you're into the tarot, or your pendulum, for goodness sakes, whatever works for you in terms of asking for some metaphysical guidance, spiritual guidance, turning to whatever your spiritual practices are, asking for that guidance and truth. Because in the second half of the month, I think that we will feel more clear in the actions we need to begin to take, especially to start predicating the remainder of the year, and then moving into, like you said, 2020. What are we going to be at? 2022.
Mhm.
Like, what year are we in? So here's just a couple of highlights on part 2 of the video that you can expect for us around the 11th. We will put that video out. Venus will enter Libra. Uranus is going to go into its retrograde phase. The sun will move into Virgo. Most importantly, we have a second full moon in Aquarius. So if you remember, in July, we have an Aquarius full moon at 1 degree Aquarius, the very beginning degree, the initial baby Aquarius, energy. And in the second half of August, we've got a second full moon in Aquarius at the anaretic degree, which is the 29th mastery degree. And this is a big old full moon. So we're not going to give you too much information, but it's a big deal, and it's going to cause some interesting eruption and disruption. Yet there are ways to navigate this energy that can actually create, I think, transcendent illusion, because Aquarian energy is such a theme of 2021, and we're moving really into the Aquarius age. So the 29th degree of Aquarius is
Yeah.
the mastery of Aquarius, which is going to, I think, challenge the hell out of us. I really, really do, in this full moon. But last but not least, at the very end of the month, and there's other little things that are sprinkled in throughout this, but we end the month with Mercury trining Pluto. So I think there's some mental transformation and things and alchemy that can happen there.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you want to say or allude to just in the second full moon? I don't want to like give people too much of a taste, but I just want I want people to know that it's extremely auspicious
Yeah.
yet profound.
Well, that moon, I pay attention to the moons. I think if you're a Cancer or if you're a more lunar person, these moons affect you a little bit more.
Right.
But this moon being at the anaretic degree, the anaretic degree, it's the last stage of a sign before it goes into the next, right? And so it is a point of mastery. In Aquarius energy, it is about our personal position, our individuality, but within the collective.
Right.
So something is really transforming and taking place during this full moon about your personal position, but also how it relates to the world at large. It's going to look different for every person based on where the moon hits your birth chart. But it's going to be probably one of the most intense moons of the entire year of
Yeah,
2021.
I agree. And because we've talked about time bending and shifting, I'm hosting this retreat at the end of the year. and everything, it's on soul progression and regression, so past life and future life work and all the bleed through of time. And I think that this second half of the month and this moon is also very, very profound time to be aware of the hierarchy of ourself and our soul, or depending on your belief systems, really getting in touch in all of the elements of your psychology. So the levels of the brain, the way we think, the psyche, the subconscious, the unconscious, the conscious mind, the ego, bridging the ego with the higher self, the oversoul, God consciousness, our source energy, our divinity. There's a lot going on, but it's going to be through a very intense lens that's moving us into either higher levels of consciousness or pulling us down into very linear, very rigid, outdated, old thinking. So the rules of engagement are officially changing during this energy. And so the chess game's changing. The chessboard, the chess game, the players, everything is starting to shift.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Just as a reminder, we've got timestamps that will be included at the bottom of the video, so you can return and you can jump in and follow along and fast forward or move to an energy or a date. And then we will release the second half of the month a little bit later on. So around August 11th, the video where we will map out the astrology and the numerology for the second half of the month. And Chris, just to remind everyone, if they want to get a hold of you, to get a natal reading or a progression reading, how they can do that.
Yeah, so you can email me at plutoontherise@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to, as long as you know your birth time, right? That's the most important part. As long as you know your birth time, I'm happy to pull the charts and to get into whatever you're wishing guidance from the stars for.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, it is such a delight to talk to you. And as you all can all see, when we dive in, we were going to keep this at 30 minutes, but once Chris and I dive in, I mean, both of us are intense. And we love to dive into it and the psychology of things and how things impact us both practically and also spiritually, metaphysically, and transcendently. So we hope this helps. Give us some good feedback in terms of what you want to hear from us, what you want to learn, and how we can further engage you and inform you to keep you navigating the energy of the cosmos. Be well, everyone. Take care.